Welcome to Book Chat Book Club. I'm so excited to be with you today, and we have our guest author, Megan Walker, the author of Lakeshire Park and Miss Newberry's List most recently, which I'm super excited to talk to her tonight.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Well, I want to read your biography and ask you a couple questions because this is pretty interesting. Megan Walker was raised on a berry farm in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, where her imagination took her to times past and worlds away. While earning her degree in early childhood education, she married her one true love and started a family. But her imaginings of Regency England wouldn't leave her alone, so she picked up a pen, and the rest is history. She lives in St. Louis, Missouri with her husband and 3 children. What was it like being raised on a berry farm? I've never even heard of a berry farm.
It was a blast. My dad raised strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, and raspberries. And we had acreage behind our house. And it was, as a kid, going out and finding the first ripe red strawberry was like finding treasure. So always going out when I was hungry, and, the wildlife in our backyard was just a blast. As a kid, you go out, you eat, you explore. Best ever.
Yeah, it sounds like an idyllic childhood. Do you still love berries to this day, or did you get sick of them?
Oh no, I love them, and I'm a bit of a snob. Like when I go to the grocery store, I'm the lady like smelling the strawberries and like the blueberries and making sure they look exactly the way I want them. And I can tell, like I'll tell my husband, "Oh my gosh, the season's here. You can totally tell a difference when it smells, so
Right.
fresh, sweet."
Well, what's the secret to picking a good strawberry?
Well, I think it just depends. I think being in season around May is the best time to get some strawberries, and nice and big and red, and just the smell of it. You can just smell when it smells so sweet and ripe.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
awesome. Does your family still live on the berry farm?
No, they do not. That was my childhood. And then after when I was about 12, my parents divorced and went their separate ways, and the berries were no more, but I have such pleasant memories of them. It was a beautiful time in my life.
So maybe the sweet smell of berries takes you back to the awesome childhood you had.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny how smells and, things like that can do that for us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for me, it's songs and music. There are certain songs that'll take me back to a spot in my childhood, and isn't that funny how our senses are so attuned to memory?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's also when you can put that into a book. So
Yes.
tell me about your publishing journey. I don't know too much about you besides that I love your books. So
No, thank you. Yeah, no, it was everybody's journey is different. Mine was kind of random because I didn't really think that I would ever write a book. And I started writing after my son passed away, and as kind of a therapeutic sort of a thing. And I wrote a first chapter and went to a conference, met some incredible women and who exchanged chapters with me and critiqued, and we became critique partners. And I won third place in the first chapter contest, and for my first chapter, and was like, oh, I think I'm okay at this. And like kind of was like I'm having fun, and if my writing's okay, I should just keep writing, right? So
yeah.
I finished the book and sent it in, and I got 2 offers for it, and I chose my publisher, and it's been fantastic ever since. So I think I got really, really, really lucky, and I'm totally grateful for it. I recognize that not everyone gets published on their first book that they write. So I'm really, really grateful that it worked out.
So how many books do you have out? More than 2, right?
I have 2 novels through Shadow Mountain, and then I wrote 2 novellas, which are shorter books, shorter stories, with my critique partners and friends of mine, through little series. So one is like a forever after retelling series, and another one that we did, or it's like fairy tale retellings, and another one that we did was just like best friends that we wrote together who find their happily ever afters in a little series. So yeah, those were a blast to write. But I do think that writing novellas is so much harder than writing novels because you have to condense it all in a small story. And I hate that. I want to write all the things.
Right. And still have a good character arc too. Sometimes
Oh
it's
my
hard to
gosh,
put that into a novella.
so hard. But some of them, people can do them so well. I don't know that I did them justice. Sometimes I go back and I'm like, I want to rewrite that as a longer story.
Yeah.
But I love them. Yeah. So I've written 4, I guess.
So 2 full length and 2 novellas. And are they all under your name?
Yes.
so easy to find.
Yeah.
I was happy to see Lakeshire Park was on sale. I don't know if it still is today, but yesterday it was only $1.99. So
I know it's been for $1.99 for a little bit. I'm trying to get the word out. So thank you for saying that.
yeah, that was one of my favorite reads that year. So
Thank
love
you.
it. Well, let's talk a little bit about Miss Newbury's List. Where did you get the idea for that? Because that kind of had everything. It had the treasure hunt, a little bit of tension, the fun, witty banter with two characters who are at totally, kind of different points in their life.
Yes. So the idea came, actually, it's kind of silly, but just thinking like as a person who married young, I met my husband my senior year of college, and we quickly became engaged because it was just one of those things where we just knew, and but I was so young. And so like now that I have kids and I'm watching after my home, it came to me that I was like, I have everything I've ever wanted. Like I'm, and I thought like, but there's so many things I could have done when I was young and didn't have kids and wasn't married. Not that I would change my life because I love my life. But then I started thinking like, would I have been more ready to be married had I done, XYZ or traveled more or whatever. And so then I was like, let's write a story about this. So I created Rosalind, and I thought, let's give her this Duke who is the perfect, in Regency era, perfect marriage. He's handsome, he's titled, he's super wealthy. And then let's give her an opportunity to do all the things she's ever wanted to do, a list that she made when she was a girl. And let's see how she feels when she finishes it. And I think ultimately the story I wanted to tell with Miss Newbury's List is that lists like Rosalind's never end. Like you just keep adding onto them. But the most important thing is finding that person to share your life with who supports your dreams and supports the crazy things you want to do and helps you add on to your list throughout your life. So
yeah. I think one of my very favorite scenes, and this isn't a spoiler or anything, but one of her things on her list was to display her art, and just how that comes about was so sweet, and had that little bit of danger. Are they going to get caught? And I don't know. I just love that scene. That was such a cute scene. Now, Rosalind's kind of at a point in her life where she's accepted, her lot in life. She feels lucky that the Duke wants to marry her. It's going to help her family, help their, station in life or whatever. And then, of course, she meets Charlie, who is not happy with where he's at in life. And it's such an interesting dichotomy with those two coming to see what they truly want. So I just loved how you did that. It was so, I don't know, was fun to read. It kept me turning pages for sure to see how it was all going to end.
Well, thank you.
So are you a planner or a pantser? Did you have to plan this all out, or did you just go through and be a pantser with the whole thing?
Oh man, this one was hard for me. Lakeshire Park came out so seamlessly. I mean, there were points where I was like, no one's gonna want to read this, but like when it came to writing it, when I would sit and write, it would come out quite easily. Miss Newbury's List went through several different revisions because I couldn't quite figure out how to make Roz and Charlie fit. But then once I did, it flew out of my fingers. The list actually was not in my first draft, which is funny, right? Because it just goes to show how much a story can change. But right. I wanted them to have a story together so bad, and then it clicked, and I was like, here it is. And then it came out. But yeah, it was a bit more challenging to put those two characters together. And then like I said, it just clicked in my head. And so I guess to an extent, I didn't plan as much until I figured it out. And then once I figured it out, I was able to see this is how I want this to work. So maybe I should say too that it takes me a minute. I have to do a lot of pre-writing, I guess, to figure out who my characters are. And then it's easier for me to see kind of where I want them to go, if that makes sense. Sorry. It sounds crazy saying it out loud.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting to me to hear other writers' processes. And Emily McKibben just jumped on and said that's interesting to hear about the writing process. So I think so too, because every single writer is so different in how they approach it. When you say you do pre-writing, do you ever release any of those as like deleted scenes or anything?
Oh, you would want it. I mean, so for Miss Newberry's List, my critique partners make fun of me because I wrote probably 20 different first chapters. Once I figured it out, like how to start the story, finding the starting point is such a pivotal part in a story. You have to drop in right at the right time. And I couldn't figure out where to drop in. So I maybe one day could reread some of them and see if any of them are funny, because it could be fun. I do have a lot of deleted scenes. I keep a working doc of things that don't work or things that don't quite serve the story like I want them to. Maybe one day that would be fun to pull some out of those, but it's kind of intimidating.
That'd be fun for newsletter subscribers to see. I would love to see an alternate first chapter. That would be so fun.
That's a good idea. Maybe I'll look back.
Oh, well, Charlie in the book has he boxes. He's like a pugilist or whatever. So did you have to do a lot of research about that in Regency time?
Yes, and oh my gosh, it was fascinating. I guess so. Pugilism, it kind of ebbed and flowed throughout history. At some points in time, it was widely accepted. At other points of time, it was very shunned. And so during the Regency period, I had to do a lot of like pinpointing, like what would it have been like in this year or at this specific time. And gosh, even the way they stood, what they used, punching bags like wasn't really a thing, but the Greeks way back in the day used what our equivalent to a punching bag would be. So I gave him that knowledge, not even 1,000% sure that he would have called it or known, there's so much uncertainty with history, but yes, I poured over books and looked back in time just to see what the Egyptians did,
Yeah.
It's crazy the wormholes or the holes you can go down with research and just spend days and hours and hours. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was a perfect thing for me, and for Charlie's grief, thinking like how he could use that was also interesting and inspiring to me. So,
yeah. Did you have to research much else? I mean, what was the other thing you maybe researched the most for this book?
I think with every Regency, social rules and customs is always a huge thing. Making sure you're not stepping over too many lines or making things unrealistic. And we want to stretch that line or push that line because we want to entertain, but we also don't want to cross it too many times and have it be too unrealistic. So that's definitely something I'm always very conscious of. Even silly stuff like who would have opened the door, the footman, the butler, you just, you have to like take so many things into consideration for little things like that. So yeah, sometimes I could research for hours over something as silly as who would have opened the door.
Don't you think that would have been a boring job? I mean, just sitting there by the door waiting for people to come in or out. I mean, I guess it would be an easy job.
It totally depended on the household, how big it was, how wealthy the family was. There's so many things. Like sometimes they'd be so busy, they'd be running back and forth, trying to do 10 things at once. They were definitely not paid enough. All that they did.
Have you ever been to England? Have you visited any of the places that you describe in your book?
Yes. So just over the summer, friends and I got to go. We went to Scotland and England, and oh my gosh, seeing all the places that Jane Austen walked and the country estates and the sprawling hills. And it's just, it was heavenly. We even like parked on the side of the road and went into a field and just twirled around and, just tried to get the feel of what it would feel like and using our imaginations. And it was funny. We talked, when I went to the Cliffs of Dover, which was an inspiration for the cliffs that Roz and Charlie stand on. And there wasn't a ton of wind that day. And I was like, shoot, I wrote in wind. But then also, I mean, you can't ever, wind comes and goes. So it's fine, right? But yeah, seeing stuff like that, looking over and seeing the similar side to what I wanted her to see was just so cool,
Yeah. Did you have a favorite place that you went to, or were they all a favorite?
Honestly, this is a question that many people have asked. And honestly, I think as far as like inspiring places besides Dover, I went to Brighton, which Brighton has changed drastically compared to what it was back in Regency times. It's still a very fun and interesting town. But I think Bath, honestly, was the most interesting and fun place. We could have explored there for days. Like, we walked around, we went to the pump room, which was so cool to sit and take tea and drink the waters. And because they've preserved it so well since
Right.
back in that time. And so even though we all walk, in modern clothing and whatever, just walking the streets and seeing the buildings, going to the Royal Crescent, it's just all so cool to see in person. And they've, like I said, preserved it so well. So that, I think, that is a place that I would love to go back and just explore even more, because it was so cool.
Did you have a favorite food that you ate over there?
Oh my gosh. So brown sauce. Have you heard of brown sauce?
Mm-mm.
Okay, neither had I. We get there and we're having, I can't remember, lunch or something. And someone comes up to me and says, "Would you like brown sauce with your sausage?" And I'm like, "What's brown sauce?" And they looked at me and they were like, "Brown sauce. It's brown sauce." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about." So they brought me up this little cup and it had like this brown sauce in it. And I tried it and oh my gosh, I guess it's like their ketchup. I'm sounding so silly right now, but it is so good. I dipped my sausage in it. I like bought a bottle of it to take home. Like, it is so good. That's kind of a silly thing to love because all of the food was so good. Their fish and chips. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
My
The
favorite.
prawns in Brighton. Oh, the prawns were so buttery and delicious. So much food. I'm a foodie, so anywhere I travel, I want to eat all the food.
Yeah.
Not disappoint.
Did you bring the brown sauce home?
Oh yeah, I have a big bottle actually upstairs still, and little ones that I'm never going to open, that I'm just going to keep as keepsakes because I just loved it so much.
Oh, that's fun. Now I want to try it.
You have to. You can buy it on Amazon. It's like, I don't know, $8 to get shipped over. Worth it, I promise.
That's
Huh?
literally what it's called, just brown sauce.
Brown sauce. Yes, brown
That's
sauce.
funny.
Look it up. It's delicious. But the sad thing is, it's really hard to find sausage that, or not sausage, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, that tastes the same here as it does over there. But it's still good. Don't let that keep you from it because it's still super good.
That's what I was surprised about when I was in England. Like fish and chips, you would think would be fairly universal, but it tasted so different there. There was just something, I don't know, so much more delicious there.
I agree. 100% agreed. Yes.
Well, and I'm from Canada, so a lot of the same English things we have in Canada that they have in England, but I've never heard of that sauce. So
Okay, look it up. Maybe
cool.
you'll love it. I promise. I promise.
Okay, well, if you didn't write Regency, what genre would you write?
That's a really good question. I would love to write a contemporary rom-com. I don't know if I have it in me though, because my stories, I think, sometimes end up a little more serious than I always think they will. I think that I just enjoy writing hardships. But you can get that in a rom-com. So I might try one day. Also, I love fantasy. I love to read fantasy. But I don't know if I'm capable of it. It's one of those things that you're like, this sounds really good, but it would stretch me. And I totally believe that stretching yourself is the way to live. Like, you learn when you stretch yourself. So
Yeah.
I love both of the idea of both of those things. Maybe one day we'll see. I don't know.
I write military suspense, romantic suspense, but my favorite genre to read is Regency romance. And so I thought I wanted to write one, but I was afraid that it wouldn't, I don't know, come out right or turn out well. But anyway, I tried it and stretched myself and it worked out. So maybe we'll write a fantasy sometime.
Yes. And we do it, there are things we should just do for ourselves, right? Just to enjoy it ourselves.
Yeah,
So,
just to have a fun. Have you ever had a fun little secret project?
I do have a little secret project that I've not told to a soul. It's very close to my heart. So I don't know that I'll ever let anyone read it. I don't even know what I would categorize it as. It's kind of a strange thing, but I do. Don't we all have something in our heads we don't want to share? That's just for us. Yeah.
Just one little thing. I keep a journal. I've kept a journal since I was 12 years old, and that's very cathartic for me. And I love going back and looking at them. Do you keep a journal?
I have a journal. I wrote in a bunch around the time that my son was in the NICU and then after he passed away. And I stopped picking it up when I started writing fiction, which is not, I don't know that that's I should write in my journal more. I loved it. It's it's something that I always thought, like, this is for my children. You know, I want to write down my thoughts and my life for my children. And then I kind of said, I want to write books that have themes that I want to teach my children. And so, you know, in my fiction, I kind of put it in there. But I love a journal, and you've inspired me. Maybe I'll pick it up. I haven't thought about it in a while.
Yeah. Well, the passing of your son obviously affected you. Do you think that those feelings and emotions that you felt through that have come out in your writing?
Absolutely. I mean, his name is Simon. He is the reason that I started writing, and I dedicated Lakeshire Park to him, actually. And I think anytime I write something that makes me feel something very strongly, it comes from a place where he lives in me. So I think that he's a part. I mean, he's a part of my everyday. I think of him as much as I think of my living children. And so it's just, my kids are a part of me, all of them are. And he definitely has a special, special place in my heart. So for sure. Yeah.
Do you think of him as kind of a muse?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I'd have to ponder that.
Yeah. Sorry, it just struck me to ask that. Emily said, I love feeling things while reading. And I really think as writers, you know, you feel emotions, and that's what, I don't know about you, but don't you just have those, like an empath type feeling when you can just deeply feel other people's pain and emotion and your own, and that translates to the paper, or you hope it does?
Absolutely. I mean, have you ever cried while writing something?
Yeah.
I have, and then I feel so silly. Like, why am I crying? But it's because we love them, right? We love
Yeah.
the part of ourselves that we're portraying, and we love the character that we're creating, because I think, like, maybe my characters aren't real, but someone out there like them exists, and you kind of do feel empathy for the parts of real people that you put into these characters. I totally think.
You have a favorite character you've ever written?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I really, really love Preston from my novella, A Beautiful Love. And he sticks out to me. I love all my characters. You know, you love them all. It's so impossible to pick just one that's great. But Preston, I think so his story was he was burned in a fire, and doesn't think he belongs with his best friend, who he was kind of almost proposing to. And it makes me very, I guess, think of myself and my feelings of unworth sometimes. And I think I put that into him. And so I just hold him close. Like, I love him so much, because I want to tell, like, my daughter and just everyone, like, it doesn't matter, you know, how you feel, like, you are worthy of love and everything. And I don't know. I think of him. On the funny side, though, I truly loved writing Georgiana from Lakeshire Park, because she was a hot mess, and she just, God love her, was so funny to listen to things in my head come out from her mouth. It's definitely her as well.
Oh, isn't that the truth? I did love her too. I didn't know if you pronounce it Georgiana or Georgina, because I've heard both.
I call her Georgiana in my head, but you can call her whatever you want.
So once you became a published author, what was the most unexpected thing that you didn't know would happen when you became a published author?
The most unexpected thing, I think, was how welcoming the community of authors was, and finding my people who are just like me. Like, that was not something I always thought, it was weird that I would make up stories in my head, and I knew people did, but it wasn't until I started writing and then met like minds that I was like, oh my gosh, there are people who are just like me. Their weird matches my weird. And, like, you feel like you're at home all of a sudden. I didn't expect that I would ever feel that way. And so it was very, very awesome to just find, a group. And I do think that there was, like, inspiration and who was writing at the same time I was writing, because some of the friends that I've made from this are just lifelong friends, and I didn't think that would happen. So very cool. Yeah.
What's the best part of being a writer?
Oh my gosh, connecting with people 100%. I've made so many friends, and just hearing people's stories and just talking more. I can be an extrovert for sure, but I think deep down I'm an introvert. I was incredibly shy as a kid. And so, my friends I hold very dear, and through this experience, I've been able to connect with people. And like I said, just hearing their stories, you start writing because you want to tell a story. And then you meet all of these people, you hear their stories. And it's like such a gift, right? To be given back what you're trying to give. So yeah, that's the best part for sure.
Have there been any hard parts that you didn't expect to being a writer?
Yes, the business side of it. I didn't anticipate it. I didn't even think about it because, like I said, I didn't know that I'd ever published. And so once I published, you've got those stars in your eyes, like, this is cool. And then you learn quickly that as fun and as wonderful as it is a business, and you got to treat it like a business. And, you know, that comes with some sometimes not fun things, but also such an honor to be published. So yeah.
True. So you didn't start writing until you were an adult. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a child?
A teacher. I'm a teacher by trade. One day, hopefully I'll get to it. But I was the kid who had my teddy bears lined up with a whiteboard behind me, teaching them 1 + 2 = 3. That was like my dream. So, and I think I've lived that dream through my kids, definitely. But I never got to have a classroom of my own. I was applying for jobs when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So I was like, I'll do the stay-at-home thing for a while and see what happens. And yeah, one of these days I'll get back in there.
One of these days. Or you could just write a book about a teacher, maybe.
That's an excellent idea. That could be my first contemporary. Who knows?
Yeah, there you go. So what are you working on now? Do you have a project that's coming out, or are you working on something?
I do. So my next book, I was working on it right before I hopped on with you. I'm like a chapter or 2 away from finishing it. So I'm really excited. Yeah, I know. It's another Regency romance, and this one is different. I'm stretching myself. I'm doing dual first point of view. Yeah, I know. I'm nervous about it, but I'm really loving it. So it's due. I'll send it to my publisher here in a month or 2, and hopefully we can get it out next year. So if all goes according to plan.
So tell me your process. So you finish the draft. What happens when you're done with the draft?
I am an editor, like, as I go, you know what I mean? So I'll write a couple chapters and then I'll go back and edit them and write a couple and then go back and edit the whole thing. So I kind of edit as I go. So I'll definitely, my second half is, it's either the beginning of a book or the ending of the book that I struggle so bad with. Miss Newberry's List, it was the beginning, and this one, it's the ending. So I know for sure I'll have to go back and rewrite that ending, or edit it at least, you know, several times before I'm comfortable with it. But then I'll go back over the whole thing once or twice before I'm good, sending it out to some friends and then sending it to my editor and doing it all over again with her.
So do you have a beta group and a critique group, or just a beta group?
Mostly just my critique group. They're pretty solid for me. And then I have several close friends that I reach out to as well and kind of get their feel. I think it's important to get a good, like,
cross-section.
Yeah. A good group of different people who have different strengths, who can say, like, hey, this isn't working for me, or I didn't understand this, or whatever. And
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's your favorite genre to read?
Oh my goodness. That's such a hard question.
Right.
Anything that makes me laugh. If it's got a little romance, it can make me laugh. You know, I'll read it. I love reading. So I try to read it all. Romance, I think, is just my favorite because it's just where my heart is. I love a good happily ever after for sure. But Harry Potter is also my favorite. So that fantasy element, when it's done right, you know, I'm hooked.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of humor and wittiness in Miss Newberry's List. Do you think you're a funny person naturally, or do you have to work at that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I hope I'm funny because I hope it comes across like my jokes hit right. You know, I love to laugh.
Like edit and re-edit the jokes, or do they just come out like that?
Oh, I think most of the time they just come out. Unless one of my critique partners, like Megan, that was not good. That fell flat. And then I'm like, let's just erase it and try something else. I think sometimes I laugh at myself, and it, you know, in your head it's funnier than it comes out to be. But
right. I just think when you're doing a romance like that, it is so important to have those humorous moments between the couple, and as they're getting to know each other and their feelings are starting to come to the fore. it just makes it that other layer of depth that really draws you into the characters and the story. That's what I think anyway.
Well, and it's a huge part of my own marriage. My husband makes me laugh so hard, and our sense of humor is very similar, and we immediately matched really well with just joking around, So it's just a part of my life. I think that in a relationship, like, I feel most comfortable when I'm able to joke and laugh with someone, and so I guess makes sense to me that a couple, as they're falling in love, would be silly with each other and laugh and let loose.
What was your first date? Is that hard? Is that too private?
With my husband or in general? Yeah, I was gonna say I can't remember that. My husband and I. Okay, so it's kind of funny. He'll kill me for. We always when we're rehashing this story, he's always like, "Oh," but it's true. I was dating someone at the time when we met, and it wasn't super serious, but he and I met, and I thought he was great. Thought he was really awesome and handsome and fun, but I was dating somebody, so he kept asking me out, and I kept saying, well, it's complicated, I don't know that I'm ready to break this off and try something else. I don't really want to date, period, because I was just kind of over it. Well, I ended up breaking things off with my boyfriend, and my sweet husband is still knocking down my door. And so finally one day I was like, I was studying for a test at home in my apartment alone, and he called me and he was like, hey, I'm going rock climbing and I really want you to come. And I was like, oh, but I'm studying. And then I was like, I've always wanted to go rock climbing. And he was like, just come. Like, you can study when we get home. I'll get you home early. So I was like, fine. So I went with him. And it's so hilarious because I didn't know what I was doing. And he claimed he knew what he was doing. But I was so stubborn that he was like trying to do my harness and he was taking forever, which is the story of our marriage. So my husband is very meticulous. He's just very like, wants everything to be just right. So I was like, I'll do it. I've got it. Well, I did it myself. And he was the one down, like helping me and talking to me as I climbed. I got to the top and I was like, what do I do now? And he was like, just jump off. You'll be fine. And I looked down and noticed that my buckle had completely fallen off because I hadn't tied it right. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I was terrified. And he was like, you're okay. And he like talked me down and got me down and I was safe and I was fine. But it was like in that moment that I was like, we just did that together. Like we just totally made it through that scary thing. And he wasn't telling me that I was, wrong. And he loved me through it. Our second day was rappelling off like 150-foot cliff. So after we did those few things together, it was love. And we, great. Yes.
That could have been like a near-death experience.
It was a little scary. I'm not going to lie. I held on fast to that rope and got down. But it was, we laughed because he's like, you should have let me help you. And I'm still prideful. And I'm like, I think I did it fine.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's a good one. I'm a lucky girl to have him.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of his traits in your heroes or no?
So my husband is also, while I love him dearly, the least romantic person on the planet. He tries sometimes, but he doesn't have, I don't think it comes, his romanticism doesn't come in a way that is obvious. His are very subtle, which I appreciate and love. So I write my heroes in a romantic way that he is not, which is fine because we're all different. Okay. But definitely, like I said, the humor part, so much of our banter I can see in my characters. My husband is a very even-tempered and sweet man, and so when I write scenes where people get upset, sometimes I have to be like, well, what would a man who's not even-tempered maybe react to, but yeah, a little, I guess I would say, yeah, for sure.
So is the new book you're writing part of like does it connect to Lakeshire Park or Miss Newbury's List or no?
It's in the same time period and the same date. They're both set in 1820. But other than that, no, the characters were alive at the same time, but they did not mix.
No interconnection at all?
Yep, no.
When do you expect that one to come out?
My third one?
Yeah.
That I'm thinking they said, don't quote me, I'm thinking we talked about May of next year. But you just never know with publishing. It's so hard to say, things change all the time and unexpected things happen. So
it's a crazy business for sure.
Yeah, and it is, huh? Sometimes I'm like, why did I get started in this? But you just, when it's you and it's a part of you, you can't stop.
That's right. Yep. All right, my final question. If you had $1 million, which doesn't go as far these days with inflation, but if you had $1 million, what would you do with it?
Oh my goodness. If I had $1 million,
just to spend.
I would probably pick up my family and just take us on a giant trip and just visit all the places we could reach. I think that's what I'd do.
Where's the one place in the world you would love to visit before you pass away?
Let me think. There's so many places. I would love to visit New Zealand. I haven't been, and I've seen pictures that are just absolutely stunning. I've been quite a few places in Europe and loved it all. Spain, I would also love to see. There's so many, so many.
I know. So many. Would you ever set a book that's in the Regency time period but not in England, do you think?
You know, I have considered, after visiting Scotland, I thought, my gosh, is this not the most stunning place to set a story? I mean, so stunning. Another way to stretch myself. I might.
Maybe a Highlander romance?
Absolutely. Gosh, doesn't that sound dreamy? That sounds so dreamy.
I know. I love a good Highlander romance for sure.
Me too. Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate it. I love getting to know you better, and I love your books. I think you're great. So thank you again for coming. Appreciate it. And we will see you all again next month. Thank you again. Night.
Thank you. Bye.